I think in Western culture in particular, happiness has kind of an elevated position. I think most of us feel like we're supposed to be happy. I don't think all cultures really feel that way, but I think that in general, people in the US do, and in general, Northern Western Europeans that I've met feel like happiness is, you know, if you have a choice between happiness and unhappiness, I'll pick happiness. And some people pursue it and talk about it incessantly and sell books about it and things. So I hope not to bore you by adding on to the pile, but I've learned a couple of things about happiness, and Moans actually pointed this out in his introduction. But in the past 3 years, I've learned a lot about happiness, and it boils down to the fact that happiness is not a state. So here's the story of my long walk. One day, and it was probably 2008, it might have been 2009, but I was having particularly difficult problems starting my new company and having conversations with my old company that weren't pleasant at all. And I had to choose a word carefully. This word here, despair, is the perfect word for how I felt. I'd had so much, my brain was so full, I couldn't process it all. I couldn't feel like I was thinking in a healthy way about anything. And, you know, I guess some people smoke, some people drink. I usually go do something like walk or work out or something like that. And so I just got up, I picked up my iPod Shuffle and my little earbuds, clipped the thing to my shirt, and I just decided I'm just gonna walk until I don't feel like I can walk anymore. Didn't take my phone, didn't tell my wife where I was going. I just decided I'm gonna walk 10 or 20 miles and see what happens. When it gets dark or when I get tired, I'll go back. I put my iPod Shuffle on shuffle. So of course I'm walking, and you know, when these kinds of walks happen, it's almost as if the world's just black, except for the little place in front of you to make sure you don't trip over a curb or get hit by a car. I'm only doing this to simulate walking, plus I think the cameraman probably appreciates a little action. So I really did. I walked probably 4.5 miles. I heard happy songs, I heard sad songs, I heard interesting songs that I kind of like. I heard like this really dark kind of gothic stuff that I have on my iPod and some of my tracks. And it's like, yeah, whatever. I just was listening, and the music kind of helped me a little bit. But I got about 4.5 miles or so away from the house, and this one track came on by Genesis that I hadn't heard in a really, really long time. It's a song on this album, Invisible Touch, called Domino. And you know, Genesis has these short songs that they play on the radio, and then they have these long songs that are really, really cool if you like Genesis. And Domino is one of these really, really long songs. And as soon as that came on, it's almost like a chemical rush, like some gland went, oh cool, I'm gonna secrete some stuff to make you feel better. And those things have names or brain chemicals. But it just kind of washed over me. It's like, wow, I feel actually not like I just want to step out in front of a bus or a train and kill myself here. And it was so jarring that, I mean, despair to actual like, wow, this song is actually putting like good chemicals in my body, which is really something I hadn't experienced for several weeks. And so I decided, you know what, I'm gonna kind of, you know, not go any farther, because I think now I'm probably gonna go home and fix all my stuff. But the rest of the walk I spent thinking, why am I okay feeling while this song's on? And it's all about what the song reminded me of. It's not, oh, the song has a sentence in it that's magic and it turns my brain into this happy thing. The song just simply reminded me of a time when I was happy. And the interesting thing about the when I was happy was, it was about 1986. I think this album was released in 1986. I was 6 or 7. When I really became fond of the song, I was a resident of Colorado Springs, Colorado, a really pretty place to live. And I'd been going to school there a couple of years, had lots of friends, and was approaching getting my master's degree in computer science, and had lots of really cool work, and the research work that I did for my degree was really kind of cool and fun. And I figured I was going to be, you know, happy and rich and doing some programming stuff that I loved. And I had friends that were male and female, and I also had some girlfriends, and I was really doing pretty well. But I didn't have tons of stuff that I have now, so why should I be happier when I don't have a house or a wife or kids or a decent bit of money stored up and all these things, you know, the public speaking experience. I mean, somebody says, you want to talk in front of a group of 1,000 people? I'm like, yeah, I'll do that. Because it doesn't bother me, because I've got the experience and the practice and the knowledge and I've just got the confidence I can do that because I've done it before. Because brains think think life is linear. But why would I be less happy when I've got all this stuff than I was when I didn't have any of this stuff? And it occurred to me, it's because of the loss. It's the fear of losing this stuff. Baggage is what they call it, and Dr. Phil and Oprah and all that kind of thing. I was afraid of losing my wife and my kids. And what if I fail financially and they don't want to be around me? Because obviously the only reason they want to be around me is because I'm financially successful. That's what brains do when you're in despair. And what if I lose my house? And even if they stay with me, the kids are going to have to go to different schools and have different friends and play on different sports teams that we've invested so much into. And my God, what if this Oracle thing is just not going to be something I can do because of these legal constraints that I'm going through, and I have to go be a MySQL person or Microsoft SQL Server person or just a guy that writes languages for a microelectronics center again like I used to. All these things are just freaking me out. But I realized at that point, just by hearing that song, that that's really what was going on. That's why I was so freaked out. It's because I was so afraid of losing all this stuff that I had amassed, these points that I put in the bank. So I did something sensible. I confronted my wife and I confronted my employees. And my employees told me, that'd be okay. The reason they're my employees is because they're awesome. And when really, really awesome people fall out of a business that doesn't make it, they get jobs in a week or two. Sometimes 5 or 6 weeks, but these guys, probably a week or two. So they're cool, they're fine. They kind of appreciated the fact that I let them know I was worried and that they would do anything to support me that they could. So I had a pretty good feeling about that. I confronted my wife, and I got a really interesting story back. And that's the story I'm going to tell you next. The story is called The Good Fortune of My Wife's Great Tragedy. This is my set of in-laws. My wife is the one here. This is before she became a hot 18-year-old, 23-year-old. Mom, dad, sister, and Mindy. And one day they packed up the car and they did what they like to do. They're lake people. They like to go to the lake and water ski and play in the sand and goof around and just kind of ride a boat and fish and get really dirty. And so they went on an overnight camping trip out at the lake. Had a good time. And the next day they drove back to their house, which is on a hill in the country. It's a really nice house. They just built it a couple of years previous to this trip. And when they got home, that's what was waiting for them. Nothing. They had nothing left. There's a porcelain doll that is charred and the paint's melted and bubbly on one side. And that's all. That's all they had. No photographs. They had the clothes on their back, their car, and their wallets, and that's it. Nothing, absolutely nothing was salvageable. And my wife told me that the only thing that really bothered her, that she remembers having bothered her a lot, was all the pity from all the neighbors, that everybody always wanted to talk about it with them. And as a kid, she just didn't want to talk about it. And the really cool thing about this horrific, I mean, imagine going home and finding that mess that I just showed you a picture of. But my wife doesn't really think of it as horrific. What she thinks of it as, and it's difficult for me to talk about it and not get a little bit choked up, but in this conversation, she told me this story and she said, so I really don't care. We lose everything. I've lost everything before. We're still hanging out with you. We'll still, if we have to move to an apartment, we'll move to an apartment. We lived in an apartment before. You remember before we built this house, we lived in an apartment? Was that like miserable? I mean, it was inconvenient, but was it miserable? No, we had a hell of a good time. So she coached me down and told me, why are you so worried about losing stuff? It's just stuff. And I've heard that before. My parents have told me that. I've read different religions, doctrines, and they talk about these kinds of things. I knew all these in words, but I never really got it until my wife taught me. And I'm hopeful that this part of the presentation gives you a little bit of more insight into something you've probably heard too, but you don't need to go through this yourself to have the benefit of knowing it. It's just stuff. So we're coming to a close, and I think timing's about right. I know you're interested in going and having beer and stuff in a couple of minutes. But here's another clue about happiness that I'll tell you as a story. And this comes from a really bizarre, I hope you wouldn't expect for me to engage in what I'm getting ready to show you a picture of on the next page. Who's curious? I don't watch a lot of TV. Well, one of the things I do watch is this ridiculous thing at home called The Biggest Loser. It's a reality TV show about morbidly obese people that audition and get to be on this TV program. So there's really, really, really big people. People that weigh 2 and 3 times what they ought to weigh, maybe 4 times what they ought to weigh in some cases. And these people like this guy work your ass off, literally. And they have this contest at the end of every week, and the person that loses the most weight is safe from being sent home, and the people that are working hard and good teammates and all that, they get to stay longer and work hard and for longer. And the other people that don't lose so much weight, they get voted off or sent off, and they have to go home early, and they don't get to lose all the weight. And at the end of the show, you take guys that look like this, and they turn them into that. Guys that look like this and turn them into that, and guys that look like this and turn them into that. But the show, when you watch it, it's really not about this. It's about the emotional investment into this. You watch this for 40 minutes a night, and you watch these people work so hard. And a lot of these people have never, I mean, think about these people's lives. A lot of them have never had a date, never been kissed, never felt like they had any value at all, because they're always the fat guy or the fat kid or the fat girl. And so all these people are routinely pretty pathetic. And they work so hard, and they get to the point where they figure out, this is the first time I've been happy my whole life. Why are you happy? Because I lost 14 pounds this week, and I earned it, right? And it's really compelling. It's touching. It looks like it would be just garbage, but it really, to me, because it links up happiness, achievement, and hard work in something that you can see and tell. And at the end of the season, it's really cool to see, you know, oh my God, I remember when that guy was that big, and now look at it. It's a really cool show. The odd thing about it is, you know, these people experience joy by earning their goals. The odd thing about the show is that I have everything that almost every one of these people wants. Everybody in this show wants not to be carrying around a couple 100 pounds of extra weight. I'm probably 20 pounds overweight, but I'm not a couple 100 pounds overweight. I already have. If they weighed what I weighed, oh my God, how excited would they be? But I'm not that excited about weighing what I weigh. If they had a wife and kids like I have, oh my God, how excited would they be? I'm excited I got kids, but you can't maintain that level of excitement every day. I can't anyway. I mean, I love them, but I'm nowhere near as happy routinely every day as I was on the day that I met my wife, or on the day that my boy came to me and said, Daddy, I was wrong. I switched the bulbs. Here's why. So these happiness things are weird. Here's another one for you. Studies show by studying lottery winners of lotteries that win more than $1 million US, and accident victims that were healthy, vibrant people, but after the accident now they're quadriplegic. After a year of the event, routinely the accident victims are happier than the lottery winners. Now, the lottery winners have learned that their relatives are predators. They've learned what tax law really looks like. They've lost most of what they won a year ago. So their curve is going strong down. People that were in a car crash a year ago and they found out that they've lost the use of their arms and their legs, but they've earned back the realization that, you know what, life's still worth it. And maybe they've gotten some feeling back in their fingers, or maybe just some little tiny victory that any of us, if our finger tingled in here, we'd go, finger's tingling, that's weird. Okay, that's all better. But to somebody who's in a hospital bed for 8 months, not being able to feel anything below here, and their fingers are tingling, can you imagine the joy they feel? So this happiness thing is bizarre. It's bizarre. Studies show that money, promotions, religion, those things don't make you happy. And if you want to know more about this, there's a great young lady named Jennifer Ocker who teaches this kind of stuff at the Stanford University Business School. And you think back, when have I been happiest? Well, first date, that's a big happy day. My wedding day, it's one of the happiest memories of my life, which I think is, were you happy on this 7 or 8 times? Yeah, it's universal, it's Danish, it's US. Yeah. Events when I connect with my children. I mean, I told you sincerely, one of the things that I'll always remember, if I have the health to remember things forever, is when my son came to me with, I was wrong, I switched the bulbs. I mean, how cool is that? And that's one of the happy things. winning when my team was sure to lose. You ever watch a game on TV and you think, God, we're doomed, and you win the thing in the last second? I mean, that's really happiness, but there's spikes. Surviving when I was sure to perish. I remember one of the days that I was the happiest in my whole life. I'd gone off on some kind of little ambling around a national park thing with a bunch of friends in graduate school, and I decided I could climb my way up about a 25-foot steep face of rocks. And I got about 98% of the way to the top, and I got 24 feet up in the air, and I realized I can't go up, and I can't go down. And I stood there as my hands and arms got tired, my forearms started to kind of get that burn in them, thinking, how am I going to plan my landing? Because I'm going to have to let go in a couple of minutes. And then I heard a guy up there and I said, hey, can you give me a hand? The guy leaned over and pulled me up. And dude, I'm telling you, that's happy. I mean, I just like, after that, I'm like, geez, I could have died or broken both my ankles or splashed my head down there. And that's really, really happy. But it takes a horrible thing to happen before you can have this experience. And it's bizarre. So anyway, my point here is that having doesn't make me happy anyway. It's earning. And I don't know if it's that way for everybody, but it's that way, I think, for a lot of people. Now, here's something ironic, though. If having doesn't make you happy, it's earning. If having the correct answer isn't more important than the process of being able to earn other correct answers, right? Thinking clearly is more important than the right answer. Then why is it that for people we love, we try to give them everything they want? That's a hard problem for me, and I don't have a solution to it. But I know when I go home, I'm going to try to get my kids everything they want for Christmas. I mean, I'm going to try to. But I know that I shouldn't. I know that there's some things that I should withhold and say, no, you're going to have to earn that yourself, and they'll appreciate it. And they have this dream of, someday I want an iPhone, and someday I'll get it. And they're not going to get it this year. So there are a few things that we don't get our kids. But in general, why then do we, if having is not what makes you happy, then why do we think we're going to make somebody happy by giving them something? And the answer to that's a longer presentation I'm not going to do today either, but it's because giving makes us happy too. Studies show as long as the giving is done on your own terms. I'm not saying that getting mugged makes you happy, or that paying taxes necessarily makes you happy. It depends on your attitude towards the event. But my bottom line is that happiness is not a state, I think. It's a state change. And you just have to have faith sometimes. I know that this has sustained me at times. And I've seen people tweet about being depressed and stuff. And I don't tweet about stuff like that because I don't really want to appear weak and those kinds of things. I guess I've kind of changed that today. But sometimes I really, in my life, have felt like I just don't have enough fire in me to keep it going. But I've always had the faith, and this is uninformed faith. It's not a religious, particularly, ecclesiastical faith. But I've always had faith that, I know some really, really cool things have happened to me before, and I'm pretty sure some really cool things will happen to me again. And I know I can't predict them because they're totally nonlinear.